Today I'm going to be taking you guys around our homestead while I'm feeding hungry animals and talking to you a little bit about how we started out here on Mulberry Branch Farm. It's something we've never really gone over in our channel, but thanks to Squeaky Tree Homestead, they've had this wonderful idea to have a collaboration on what we think it would take to start a homestead in the year 2022. And it really got me to thinking, and it got me to reminiscing, and I thought, nobody's ever heard the story of why we started our homesteading journey where we did and why we're named the way we're named. So we're gonna go ahead and tell you what we think it takes to start a homestead in the year 2022. And to give you a little bit of a background, I live here in East Central Indiana with my husband Mark and my daughter Josie. We started our homestead back in 2010. It's really amazing to me to think that we've been at this for 12 years. That when we first moved to our 13 acres here in East Central Indiana, that it was just an old retired cornfield that had borders that were just filled with mulberry trees. Hence how we came about with the name of our farm, which is Mulberry Branch Farm. When we started, there was nothing here, and 12 years is a substantial amount of time, especially when I go back and think of all the time, the effort, the blood, sweat, and tears, all of the changes and adaptations that we've made to this piece of soil. It's just kind of amazing. And I started to think, if it were me in 2022, at my current age, with my experiences, what would I tell someone that they need to have in order to start a homestead in 2022? And really, when I stop and look around, again, thinking of all these things that I never thought I would do to what I'm doing right now, our homestead has been in a constant wave of evolution since we started this journey. And I can remember all of the fervor that we had when we first started here, how the first thing we did was we mowed down the field and the house was built, and not long after the house was built, the barn went up, and then after the barn went up, we had a chicken coop installed, and it's just been one thing after the other. So that brings me back to this collaboration. I have to think back 12 years as to where I was when we first started our homestead, when we first named our farm, or whatever it is you think we're doing here. The bottom line is, we're trying to be self-sufficient, have fun, and grow while we're doing it. We're just here to feed. Nobody wants your eggies. I know you're setting them. Here, look. Feed. Oh, mommy number 2. So what do I think now of 12 years of doing a homestead? We've only been sharing our life here on YouTube for, oh my goodness, just a little over 2 years. And boy, what a journey that has been. And I know a lot of you might be like me. When you started to think about a life of self-sufficiency and having a homestead, livestock, gardening, you probably went online and watched all the YouTube videos you could. It's probably why you're here watching this video. When you start looking at all of the ways you can homestead, it can be a little overwhelming. And honestly, it's overwhelming because there's so many different ways to do it. Homesteading, in essence, is fluid. There's not just one way to do it. It doesn't fit in just one box. And really, when we first started our homestead, we made a plan. And the reason that I would encourage you to make a plan is that plans set up parameters, expectations, and goals. Not to mention, the plan that you have for your homestead sets a really good foundation for what's to come. And setting up a homestead is a lot like building a house. You have to have a really good foundation in order for it to grow and to be sustained. If you don't, it might crack, it might crumble, it might become really overwhelming and fall in on itself. So that's number 1. You need to set up a plan. And don't be ashamed if you're like me and need to have a pen and paper to write it all down. And don't be afraid to hold on to that list, to that plan, because it might be really helpful for you to go back in a couple of years and look at it and be reminded how far you've come. Because trust me, homesteading can be fast and furious. Things are always changing, things are always happening. What you think you're going to be doing that day often changes like 1,000 times. And that happens over the years too. So make sure you sit down, write out, type out, make a plan, make a blueprint for what you think you want out of homesteading. That might mean gardening, might mean livestock, beekeeping or foraging, or just preserving your food and being self-sufficient. And regardless of where you decide to do your homesteading, because like we said, homesteading is fluid, it can be done on a balcony from your apartment. It can be done on less than 1 acre. It could mean turning your backyard in modern suburbia into a food forest, or it could mean getting some land, setting up livestock, growing big gardens, market gardens, turning your homestead into a business. It is important that those plans are written down. But it also means that you have to look at the space that you have available to you at the time. Do you plan to grow? How big do you want to grow to? Because that can kind of decide if you're looking to buy a homestead or to buy a piece of land. That can really limit the options that you have for yourself. That means you're doing the balcony garden. Look at the different types of varieties. Look at the different types of gardening. You can do vertical gardening, you can do container gardening. It really is looking at the space that you have available to you at the moment, or the space you're going to be moving to. That can sometimes dictate what you get to do on your homestead. It can dictate what type of animals you run, how big a gardens you're running. It can dictate how much you can grow or how small you need to stay. And regardless of your space, it's important to aim small, miss small, and slow and steady wins that race. The reason I'm going to tell you aim small, miss small, if you start small, it kind of helps you to set expectations that won't set you up for failure to begin with. Because trust me, you're going to have failures. But it's important to look at your failures as tools for your next experience. They don't define you. They don't define that growing season, that birthing season, that season of growing out livestock. It's just something that helps you to learn for your next experience, to be more successful in your next experience. Failures lead to greater successes if we learn from them. Slow and steady wins the race, because if you're like me, you bought every blue million animal that you could find. You wanted chickens, turkeys, quail, rabbits, goats, horses, cows, pigs. You wanted all of it. Grandma used to tell me a jack of all trades is a master of none. And I used to think that was silly, because I'm like, well, I want to be a jack of all trades. I want to know a little bit about everything. And you can, while also being a master of all. But you have to start small, you have to start slow, do your research, build your knowledge, and start from a foundational piece. So for like livestock, it's chickens. Chickens, quail, or rabbit are small yet very productive and high producing animals that you can start out with on a homestead that get the feel for being committed to a routine, committed to feeding animals, taking care of them, putting their needs before you if they need you to, and then putting you in that right mindset for success and knowing exactly what it takes to be successful with animals. And the same for gardening. Don't put in 13 raised garden beds. Start with 1 or 2, get the feel for it, and add on as you go. Sometimes if we start out too big, we set ourselves up to be overwhelmed, to fail, and to burn out. And trust me, burnout is a thing on a homestead. One of the last things that I'm going to tell you, you probably need to have in order to start a homestead, that homesteads require a lot of investment, but it's okay to work with what you've got. It's okay to look at a pile of pallets and see a goat shed. That's how a lot of us start. Go couple pallets, couple tarps, some panels from Tractor Supply, T-posts, and there we go. There's our first goat shed. And then sometimes it turns into this. It turns into an obsession. And it's because you start out small and are frugal at the beginning that you can start to afford those bigger, better things when you upgrade. And also when you start with the smaller things and start with the harder labor sometimes, it makes you appreciate when you get to upgrade to a milking machine after you've milked 12 Nigerian goats twice a day for months on end and now have carpal tunnel. And I will say, sometimes it's all about your mindset. It's how you look at things. It's how you mentally set yourself up for success. And your mentality can be everything on a homestead. It can make and break how you look at situations, how you use a thought process to get through creative problem solving, because that happens a lot on a homestead. But your gumption, your grit, your passion for it, setting yourself up mentally to be comfortable with discomfort, because sometimes we got to get the seeds in the ground. Sometimes we have to be out with livestock on cold nights when they've decided to go into labor and to birth out the next generation. Sometimes you have to be able to set yourself up mentally for a financial loss, because we put a lot of ourselves, time, and money into our homesteads. And sometimes if we can mentally set ourselves up to know that that's going to happen, it makes it easier to cope with, and it makes it easier for us to adapt and make the next season successful. And trust me, this is just how I think we can be successful when we're starting a homestead in 2022. Because a lot of things right now in our economy and our society are not set in stone. There could be some really hard times ahead of us. And anybody that wants to move to being self-sufficient, providing their family with their own food, growing their own meat, growing their own vegetables, just deciding they want to be able to be self-sustained and to depend on number one and not all of those other things out there, like the grocery store, supermarkets, things like that, that sometimes might not have things on the shelf that we need. The thing I'll say about homesteading is that it becomes a lot easier when you find good communities. If you find a good community, when you find a good community that supports homesteading, they support you in turn. And the wonderful thing there is if you're feeling like you're going through a hardship or you're having a bad experience, if you hook up with that community, odds are there's somebody that's been through the exact same thing or pretty close to it, and they can tell you how they got through it. Community is really important. I feel like a lot of us sometimes forget that on a homestead, it doesn't have to be just us. It doesn't have to be just our experience and our knowledge at the time. It's okay to pull from a community. Community is really important, and it's really helped me and my family when it comes to our endeavor to be self-sufficient. Keep in mind, this is only my opinion. This isn't set in stone, and the wonderful thing about this collaboration too is that means there's more than one of us doing this. So that means that you're going to get a lot of different opinions, a lot of different advice and experiences from different people that come from different walks of life, that have been homesteading for different amounts of times, that have different experiences, which means that you're going to get some really well-rounded opinions and advice here. So make sure you check out that playlist that I'm going to link down below to visit those other channels while they're sharing their experiences and their opinions with you, just like I have here today in this video. These are just some of the things that I think will really help to set anybody up in 2022 to start a homestead, because it can be really overwhelming and it can be so gratifying. It can be, and it has been for me. I can say personally, for me and my family, it has been one of the most gratifying things that I have ever done in my entire life. And I probably will never turn away from it until I'm either unable physically, mentally, or I'm in the ground. I want you to persevere. I want you to endeavor to push forward and to embrace those dreams, because you'll never know what you can do in life if you're not afraid to take that last step, to jump into the unknown. And let's be honest, homesteading can be the unknown sometimes. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you felt encouraged and uplifted, maybe a little tidbits of wisdom here and there if I'm even possible of bestowing that. And I really hope that you enjoyed everything that we have to offer here on Mulberry Branch Farm. It's been a pleasure to share my opinions with you on how to start a homestead in 2022. And I hope that you guys pulled something from it. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for being here with us on Mulberry Branch Farm. If you liked the video, let us know by dropping us a like, leaving us a comment on what you think I may have missed in this video on how to start a homestead in 2022, and subscribe. But until next time, we hope that you are all staying healthy out there and being kind to one another. We will catch y'all in the next one. God bless you. Bye, y'all.